Hey, hello. It's been a long time since I filmed. With everything going on in the world, it just for a while didn't seem appropriate. I didn't feel like I have anything to lend my voice to and would rather just step away and let other people's voices be amplified. Just still important, and I will do everything I can to do so. We also got a puppy, and that has meant that there's been a lot of barking and playing and just not much time to do anything else, especially anything that needs a bit of quiet. So I've been able to film, which means that I am very nervous. Feels like the first time again. But the puppy's gone for the day, so I figured I might as well try to get at least one video done. While doing so, I'm going to be working on this embroidery just so I have something to do with my hands. It's just my kit that I got off of Etsy. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about Marie Laveau today, right? Marie Laveau was born around 1801. There's a lot of dispute as to when she was actually born, because there were a lot of women with her same name, and so records can be a little bit difficult. That also means that there is some tiny dispute as to when she died, but not nearly as much, because by then she was famous, and so we have newspaper articles. So the most agreed upon date is sometime around September of 1801. And she was born to the illegitimate son of Charles Trudeau, who was the mayor of New Orleans in 1812. And her mother was an African and Native American woman who was known to have been Catholic and also practiced voodoo. Both of her parents were considered free people of color, making her the same. So there's some racial tension going on, some class, that all lends itself to some of the story that we think of her today as being a more evil character than she generally was. She did marry, but later her husband died, and so she was known for a while as the Widow Paris. But eventually she met Jean-Louis Christophe Dumesnil de Glapon, and he was a white man, which meant that while she couldn't marry him, due to the fact that mixed race marriages at the time were illegal, she did live with him for the rest of her life. And in New Orleans at that time, mixed race relationships were not as frowned upon. They were seen as relatively common. They had several children together, but most of them unfortunately died of yellow fever. We know for sure that she had two surviving daughters, given the first name Marie, which was a French Catholic tradition of the time, to name your daughters Marie and your son Jean. And then they would have their middle names, which would be the ones that they would generally go by, but one of her daughters decided to go by Marie for the rest of her life, just as her mother did. So, as I said, Marie Laveau was considered to be the voodoo queen of New Orleans for a while. So voodoo is often portrayed as being something evil. We generally hear it in relation just to like zombies and voodoo dolls and evil practitioners of magic. But this was not the case. Voodoo is actually a religion that is a mixture of African, especially West and Central African beliefs mixed with Catholicism. It started in Haiti when it was colonized by the French, but then once people were taken to the Americas, that started to evolve into Louisiana voodoo. So there are different types of voodoo. There's also the hoodoo of the Deep South, which is yet another slightly different version. It's just a lot of folk beliefs mixed with Catholicism, mixed with magic. Saints are worshipped. I find voodoo very interesting, but I do not feel equipped to do any sort of education on it, as I'm not a practitioner. I'm not part of the culture that practices it, and so I encourage you to look into more, but I encourage you to learn about it from the voices of those who actually practice and actually know about it. I would be interested in doing other videos about other forms of Southern magic, as having gone to school in the Deep South and growing up in kind of the South, Southern magic is something that's really interesting to me. I just don't want to culturally appropriate or speak about things that I am not equipped to speak about. So let's go back to Marie Laveau. She worked as a hairdresser, and this gave her access to a lot of different women, especially women of upper classes, but she would also be in contact with their servants and women who were enslaved as house slaves. This meant that she had a lot of influence, and people came to admire her and see her as an important figure in the community. Many of these women, especially the upper class women, would come to her for advice and for healing. So, in turn, she became a confidant to many influential women. She was a very religious woman. She was often found at Catholic masses and also would hold her own masses in her house, and also in the Congo Square, New Orleans, which was the area that many people of color, African descendants, people from Africa, enslaved people would go to congregate, especially on their days off. Marie Laveau was known for giving magical help in the way of working as an herbalist. She was well known for her gree-gree bags, which are a form of voodoo magic, and she also helped bring many children into the world as a midwife. She was also, along with this, very much a spiritual leader in that she led those masses, but also did a lot of community work. She was well liked in New Orleans at the time by the community, as she was seen as a good woman, and some letters that you can find from the times even call her saintly. She often knew what was going on with her customers, especially these wealthy women, before they ever told her, and many think that instead of being due to magic, this was because she was friends with the enslaved women and servants, and therefore was hearing gossip from them and knew what was happening in their mistresses' lives before these women ever came in. So she was using a bit of sleight of hand to gain their trust, and had some time to think about the advice to give them before they ever actually came in to ask for it. She lived well into her 70s and died in her own home in 1881. There's not much known about her life other than what I've already said. After she died, there are many reports of seeing her around New Orleans. The funeral was a large celebration of life and attended by those from many social circles. As I mentioned before, she had two daughters named Marie, and after her death, one of them took over as the next voodoo queen. We don't know if it was shortly before her death or after that she truly started to take over, but that role was passed down to one of her daughters. She was buried most likely in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, and her grave is still visited by many today. Although since 2015, you have to only go with a tour guide, because there was so much vandalism that they had to stop letting people wander this specific cemetery. The most common vandalism, though, well, it is destructive because it is writing on the stone, but it's not just spray painting random images or crude sayings, but people would come in and draw X's on her grave and ask for a wish to be granted, and then when that wish would be granted, they would return and leave Marie Laveau an offering as thanks. So people believe that her power extends beyond the grave and into life. So if you're ever in New Orleans, it might be worth it to stop by, and even though you can no longer draw an X, there's no reason you can't ask her for a little something in return, and maybe leave a flower or something behind to say thank you. So that's the story of Marie Laveau. All of my sources just came from Google. I didn't use any books, any scholarly sources, because this was just for fun. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope it inspires you to look a little more into voodoo from somebody who actually has the knowledge to share with you. I really like to talk about more historical figures like this. especially women and those whose stories have been mistold or changed to fit a certain narrative. I think that that would be really fun. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave them below. Let me know if you enjoyed this, and also if you've ever been to the grave, let me know if she granted you a wish. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to film again soon. Bye.